Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Maverick Mystic Arts Podcast. We're going to chat a little bit here about ethics. So, everybody has their own ethical statements when it comes to practice and what it is that we feel is appropriate conduct or inappropriate conduct. And as the view of training develops, the view of conduct develops with it. So our actual perceptual development and understanding and how this reflects into our actions, right? And this is a very important part of the practice. This reflects in our actions in a graduated process. As we develop more and more, as we surrender more and more, as we become more compassionate through release and openness, defabrication, we actually can connect with the environment. And as we connect more, as we recognize the relationship of ourselves, that which is within and that which is all about us, as we recognize the inseparable nature of that, this starts to really develop a respect for and appreciation of conduct, okay? Not just conduct of action and speech, but also conduct of thought and feeling, okay? So this is in all the realms. Because we are recognizing our inseparable relationship with the environment around us, we start to take more care with what we think, what we feel, how we speak, how we act. We start to take more care because we recognize the relationship of what other people say and think and feel, and how that affects us, how that affects us. So if something affects us, our own version of that affects the environment around us. So this starts to develop, and because this develops, we really have to start elevating our levels of conduct and layers of conduct and how the identity reflects through all this, right? So how specifically to do that becomes less important, and the actual evolution is what guides that, right? The specifics are sort of up to the karmic streams and connections that, you know, individuals are willing to engage in, right? Now, conduct can often be looked at as an imposition, right? Or something that we kind of fake it till we make it. And this can be a major issue because then we are acting in contrast to ourselves. We are trying to uphold an ideal in the absence of any foundation. Is it better than being a dick? Yeah, probably. But we have to come into resonance with that at every layer of ourselves, right? So the axioms of our recent retreat that I taught up in Powell River were one, and we unpacked this first one a lot, which was you too stupid, right? Let the energy teach you. Essentially, don't try to think your way out of everything, right? Allow the actual evolution and your resonance from an evolving standpoint with more and more refined layers of the vibrational scale to guide, right, and to free, rather than trying to figure your way out of a situation as a means of sustaining your habitual identity. And two, don't be a dick. So, what does that mean? Well, when we are working through this stuff, we find that we are trying to ingeniously figure out ways to sustain and retain our identity, right? And as a means of sustaining and retaining our habitual identity, we will very ingeniously rationalize how we are right. How doing this little movement is the perfect way to alleviate all the pain in the body forever. Or how our current view of a situation or of a person or of whatever is unequivocally correct. And why that is unequivocally correct and how we are right. Then we have our own little I'm awesome party in our head and our hearts and our bodies. And this gives our identity the inflation of elation, essentially. We become inflated with the elation of our own correctness and our own identity, and how that's amazing. And as we keep progressing up the vibrational scale, as we keep coming into resonance with more and more refined layers of light and layers of release and cosmic relationship and universal mind and universal consciousness, on and on and on, this will stimulate different and subtle layers of identity to fill, and we'll feel the elation of that inflated sense of identity, and we go, yummy, that's the stuff, right? And if we get stuck on that, then we get stuck at that layer and level. So view and conduct become incredibly important and inseparable. As the realization evolves, the view evolves, and as that evolves, then the conduct has to evolve. So recently I read some sutras on one of the bodhisattvas I have been meditating with on and off for some years. And it was interesting. I'd never read up on this bodhisattva before, but many of the qualities which are basically means of conduct that this bodhisattva encourages had arisen organically. And this is a really good proof of concept of what you're working on, that the actual qualities arise organically. If they arise organically, you're onto something. You're not contriving it. And that's a really great place to function from, because it's honest, it's not contrived, right? And this sincerity is very important, because at the end of the day, we aren't trying to pretend to be anything, right? When you pretend to be spiritual, or you pretend to have skills in one mechanism or arena or another, when you are pretending, this is in direct contrast to surrender. It is in direct contrast to truth, to liberation, to freedom, which is in direct contrast to further unification with truth, right? And so conduct becomes vitally important. Now, how you engage with this can be tricky, because as we elevate ourselves and our own relationship to the practice, we are resonating at essentially a lighter or higher frequency, which is less dense, right? And that lack of density is, let's see, that lack of density, I'm trying to think about not falling into the river here. That lack of density, it is in contrast, obviously, probably, to density, right? So when we are around normal people, there might be habits at play that are more dense than the layers that we are currently interacting with and engaging with. And as we really settle into our new resonance, for the time being that we are equalizing with that, it's really not so much fun to descend into the density, right? So this gets into right view, right intention, right speech, right action, the Eightfold Path, essentially, right? And Buddhism has a nice framework for that. Hermetics is, it's more open-ended, but it all becomes very important. The volition matters, right? Why do you think what you think? Why do you speak what you speak? As we start to explore this, we find that we might have an aversion to spending time with people that are no longer in resonance with our particular density or non-density that we are currently working with and practicing. So this requires a type of astral flexibility and spiritual flexibility to essentially descend with enough equanimity. If we have enough relationship with equanimity, we can descend into the depths of a more dense energy and experience without losing the sovereign relationship with that higher state of light and frequency and being, right? If we don't have that equanimity, if we haven't yet stabilized that new relationship with light, then what will happen is when we descend, we will end up becoming consumed and subsumed within that lower density, and we'll lose that higher relationship. So you then need to find ways to engage with that lower density from that higher place. And very often what happens is there will be a feeling of disconnection from an astral standpoint, from someone who is really, really working that astral, from that astral space. And it might feel like you're disconnected, right? Because you don't want to engage at that layer of awareness or that layer of expression. So for example, what I call the herpes of the spiritual world, and really any world, is gossip, right? And so many of us, the way that we find and feel connection with other people is through gossip. And that gossip is designed to make us feel stable within our identities, right? We find a stability within our identity. We gossip and, okay, we're the better version. We gossip about the other thing. We're obviously right. And because we're obviously right, that means the identity is safe. And if the identity is safe to continue existing, right, then good for it, good for the identity. So when we start engaging, when we start telling people, okay, well, this is something I don't do. When I'm teaching, I usually set some ground rules that I'm not going to, like with the students, that I'm not there to answer any questions on other teachers or systems or styles or whatever. I'm there to help them as much as I can, but I'm essentially not there to prejudice their view in any way about any other teachers or systems or anything. I'm there to do what I do, which is what I've been working on for my life, right? My life's work. So this sets a really nice framework. Now, if I mention this to friends and we sort of cut off if the gossip is starting to arise and go, hey, I'm happy to discuss you, me, anyone who's present, we can talk and kind of grow and work through our stuff together. But I don't want to talk about anyone who's not here, but I'm happy to talk about you. Some people can take that as, oh, they're not being cared for, their feelings don't matter. And this is the furthest from the truth, right? In one sense, the care can be seen as greater because you're looking towards the freedom of that person from that particular astral bonding mechanism or astrally bonding mechanism. So then this gets into some really refined stuff from an energetic standpoint of how do you engage the feeling quality, the astral quality of somebody's sense of essentially self-importance in that friendship, right? That they are cared for. How do you engage that quality and then sustain that higher frequency relationship with your own essence and your own sovereignty, with your highest, while at the same time engaging with that lower astral type of validation and support of somebody where they're at, right? This has nothing to do with hierarchy of being better or worse, or, I'm, more refined or less refined or whatever. This has nothing to do with that. It simply has to do with feeling the energy of a situation and from a place of your own sovereign unity with your highest, working within that space with absolute authenticity to the best of, our abilities, right? And, no one's a saint all the time unless you're a saint, in which case you're a saint all the time. But if you're not a saint all the time, you probably ain't a saint, right? So, we do our best, and we need to figure out through our own perceptions, our own practice, our own relationship with energy and interaction, how to navigate this particular conundrum so that you can keep growing and keep evolving on your path, right? Without being dragged down into conduct that is unbefitting of your own integrity at that, whatever point you happen to be at on your path there, right? So anyway, some stuff to think about, and you know, by no means am I a master at any of this stuff. I spend most of my time alone, so you know, I don't have to deal with this stuff. I'm in solitude in more of the personal ascension side of the practice at this phase of my life. And then, you know, you walk into society and see how much of it really crosses over, and then you alter your training appropriately and continue on, because that re-entrance back into society will stimulate and invigorate you know, all of the areas in which the habits of density are then rising and bumping into the release you've been cultivating, and there's a whole bunch of learning there as well. Okay, so anyway, that's about it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this, and thanks for watching, thanks for your time, I appreciate it, and I hope you got some value from this. If you're interested in training opportunities with me, please check out the website. We have a Qi Gong, Hermetic Alchemy and meditation program, a Tai Chi program, and the Zenden, which is a Q&A video reference library. There are hundreds of videos up on that at this point. Any questions that you have with the training, whether it's the courses or your own personal practice, I get back to you to the absolute best of my abilities via video on that platform. That would be the Zenden. All right, I think that's everything. Thanks for your time, and see you next time. Bye.